Jezusie Maryja, Matko Boska, żeby nie wybuchł, żeby nie wybuchł, już, Jezus Maria, Misiu, bo wybuchnie, cofamy się, w cholerę.
It's a mountain which unites us and excites us from within. It's a place no one cares about the color of your skin. This mountain invites us in a very special way. It's the spirit of Kosciuszko that lives on until his day.
Absolutely, everything is absolutely sunshine, beautiful, no rain,
No wind.
no wind. All telephone, mobile phones do work normally. Yeah, and the cars are not smashed at all, not even one. And what else? And what a pity we didn't take any vodka with us.
I do have some.
Very little.
I do have some. It's the honey one.
Oh yeah, but you said only 1 little glass.
That's all right. We can
Share
we can share it. Few drops for everyone.
But we can feel, and we are in fantastic situation, and we are greatly appreciated this weather and everything. We are happy. Woo!
Hello?
No, they're going up. I noticed that you haven't paid the final balance.
We have paid the deposit and we didn't...
Correct. No, you have to pay the final balance. So you'll have to ring Taylor. I will text you the number and pay it by credit card.
Wait a moment. We are on the road. We have left Threadbow and we are on narrow road now.
Yeah, if you don't ring, we're not coming.
Jak ja mu teraz stąd zapłacę? Przecież ja
Kartą
mam to...
kredytową.
Ale gdzie?
No mamy zadzwonić i przez telefon chyba podać numer. Rozumiem. No to bez głowy są. Gdzie? W Geehi, kurde. I ci dzwoni tuż przed imprezą. To mógł się nie dodzwonić, no. A był
To na
depozyt
sekundę.
zapłacony, to przecież... był zapłacony depozyt i wiadomo, że jesteśmy wypłacalni, normalni, kontaktowalni i tak dalej. A on mi grozi, skubany.
Before we proceed to the formal aspects of the ceremony, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, and we invite Auntie Iris White and Monaro Ngarigo Elder to give the welcome to country.
When we first came down here to Geehi about 25 years ago, our first visit to Geehi was facilitated by National Parks and Wildlife Service under the leadership of Dave Darlington, who was the regional manager at that time. And I'd just like to acknowledge Dave and the work and the effort that he invested in developing a relationship between the Polish members of the Polish community and the Monaro Ngarigo people.
Today we also commemorate the expedition of Paul Edmund Strzelecki, who in 1840 identified and named the highest mountain in mainland Australia, after the Polish and American national hero Taras Kosciuszko. We would like to kindly invite Dr. Monaro Ngarigo and Miss Tanea Edwards to unveil the plaques commemorating Strzelecki's expedition here 182 years ago, as well as ongoing Polish-Australian diplomatic relations.
We now come to a special highlight of today's program, which is to celebrate a new milestone in the history of this area and the significance it holds for so many people, in particular the traditional custodians of the land and the wider Australian community, including of course the Polish community. Today we plant 50 trees, each of which symbolises a year of diplomatic relations between Poland and Australia. We hope that as these trees grow, so too will the bonds and friendships between our communities.
Good morning, folks. Before I begin, I'd just like to say how moved I've felt standing here amongst this gathering. It's really touched me deeply, and I guess a lot of you are feeling similar. The poem I'd like to share with you is one that really describes where I live in Corryong, but it's appropriate to the whole area, and particularly to the photograph here. The poem's called My Snowy Mountains Home. As I gaze across their beauty, contours grand and tall, the characteristics of my mountain home intrigue me most of all. Silent moods each evening, as sundown takes its hold, deepening shadows claiming me during winter when it's cold. Their structure in the landscape compels each stranger's eye, craggy cliffs lure eagles soaring lazily on high. Home to myriad wildflowers, catchment for their streams, a challenge thrust to hikers claiming victory in their dreams. Secret, sacred places where Aboriginal folk once stood, delugers from their ramparts threatening fears of flood. Snow upon the ridge-tops majestically evident in July, a place for new discoveries, providing answers as to why. When shrouds of fog enclose them, they hide from human view. Then as the seasons take their course, their majesty shines anew. Their grandeur shaped by centuries of tempest, storm and heat. I'm blessed to feel their energy radiating through my feet. Still hidden minerals lie concealed deep within their veins. Forest fires in summer's heat deposit dreadful stains. But the treasure to be cherished in the aura of their light is their magnificence in winter when they are crowned with white.
Before we proceed to the formal aspects of the ceremony, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, and we invite Auntie Iris White and Monaro Ngarigo Elder to give the welcome to country.
On behalf of the Monaro Ngarigo people, I'd just like to welcome everyone here today. Noreen, welcome. To our Polish friends, Dzień dobry. This is an important day for us as well. We have the opportunity to acknowledge the friendship and the relationships that we've formed over the last 15 years with members of the Polish community through Kosciuszko Heritage Incorporated. Tanaya is one of the younger members of our group and around himself. When we first came down here to Geehi about 25 years ago, our first visit to Geehi was facilitated by National Parks and Wildlife Service under the leadership of Dave Darlington, who was the regional manager at that time. And I'd just like to acknowledge Dave and the work and the effort that he invested in developing a relationship between the Polish members of the Polish community and the Monaro Ngarigo people. That relationship got off to a fairly rocky start, but we met through the development of the plan of management that was, I think, finalised in 2006. It's been a long road, and we've lost many of our old people along the way. Auntie Ray Solomon Stewart, Auntie Margaret Dixon, and my mum, Auntie Deanna Davison. So we're tasked with a fairly heavy responsibility, legacy and responsibility, to maintain the stories that connect us to this country. I'd like to just thank Andres and Ernestina, Ursula and Tony, and members of LAJKONIK, who have become quite dear friends over the 15 years. And while I'm sure they'll say that we've taught them much, we've also learned a great deal from you. 5 years ago, I had the honour of leading a small delegation of Monaro Ngarigo people to Poland, where we were treated as honoured guests. So in my welcome, I hope that you feel that you are honoured guests, Mr Ambassador, on the traditional lands of the Monaro Ngarigo people. And while we gather in Kosciuszko National Park, Kosciuszko, and we remember two of the heroes of the Polish community, let's not forget that we do stand on the traditional lands of the Monaro Ngarigo people, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you.
Now we would like to invite His Excellency Michał Kołodziejski, Ambassador of the Republic of Poland, to deliver his welcoming remarks.
Good morning, everybody. Dear Director Kyle Wilson, dear Auntie Iris White, dear Anna Doloto, dear representatives of local authorities, Polish friends and friends of Poland. Let me begin by acknowledging Monaro Ngarigo people, traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. This is real honor to be here with you today. Why are we here? Our colleagues already mentioned this year we celebrate 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Poland and Australia. 50th anniversary. But our historical links are much longer. They date back to 1840, where Polish explorer Paul Edmund Strzelecki, or Strzelecki, how we pronounce it, climbed the highest mountain in the region, Mt Kosciuszko, and gave it a name after Polish-American hero, fighter for independence, person who was much ahead of his times. He was just an extraordinary person, which is highly regarded until now. And remembering about 50th anniversary and reminding about our official event, we want everybody to remember about longer historical links. And everything started here, in this region of Monaro Ngarigo. During the Second World War, there were several watershed moments in our history which created strong bonds between Poles and Australians. Everybody remember probably our friendship, our cooperation during the siege of Tobruk. Not many of you probably heard that several years later, in 1943, Australia decided to represent Poland in Soviet Union. When we broke our relations with Soviet Union after Katyn massacre, where thousands of Polish officers were executed by the Russian, Australia stepped in and represented Poland. It was much before we established our official diplomatic relations with Australia. After the war, many Polish migrants, former servicemen, came to Australia and found safe haven here, found second home. They couldn't accept the new reality in Poland after the Second World War, when Poland was a part of Soviet bloc. They couldn't accept it. They were looking for freedom. They came here and spent a long life here, building and contributing to development of Australia. In 1980s, when martial law was introduced in Poland, Australia also tried to help Poland. There was a famous fundraiser, Help Poland Leave. Australia accepted thousands of Polish migrants, and we remember about this solidarity from Australia. We tried to reciprocate in recent years when there was a devastating bushfire season in Australia. There was fantastic initiative by Polish volunteer firefighters, a grassroots initiative to collect money to help recovery of Kosciuszko National Park. It was simply amazing because it's relatively easy to collect money from governments, but those money were collected from ordinary people, from children, and sent directly to Kosciuszko National Park, which was one more example of how close this region is to our hearts. Half jokingly, I can say that if you ask an average person on the street in Poland what they know about Australia, they say kangaroo, koala, and Kosciuszko Mountain. This is really a very well-known story in Poland. And for those who are, we are trying to reciprocate. I mentioned about this Kosciuszko, this fire, devastating bushfire season, and the fundraising for Kosciuszko National Park. But only 1 year ago, Poland decided to share with Australia 1 million doses of Pfizer vaccines. It was also an element of solidarity from Polish side. At that time, it was very needed in Australia, and because of these historical links, because of great affection to Australia in Poland, Australia was the first country in the world with which Poland decided to share vaccines. And now we cannot pass by in silence tragic events we are observing in Ukraine. Our neighbor is struggling for the sovereignty, for independence, and again we are trying to act in lockstep with other countries, and Australia is part of the group which help us and Ukraine significantly, and I would like to express my highest appreciation to Australian government, but also to ordinary people for all support that we can feel. I'm in the constant touch with Ambassador of Ukraine to Australia, and we really appreciate the unanimous support of Australia to those who fight for their independence, who need to pay the highest price for their dream to be part of our world, because they are fighting our war. Ukrainians wanted to be a part of democratic, free world, and they are fighting our war. The least we can do is to take care of their children and mothers. This is what we are doing now in Poland, and Australia helping us financially, but also sending material help, proves once again that we can count on you and your solidarity. For those of you who are interested in Polish-Australian connections, we prepared a booklet which was freshly printed just several days ago, and we will distribute the booklet. Everybody can get a copy. You will be surprised how many links, how many stories, Australian stories, have Polish background, connection to Poland. Once again, thank you very much for organizing this event. Planting 50 trees for 50th anniversary of our diplomatic relations is for us a fantastic symbol of our solidarity and cooperation. I just wish that in 50 years I can be here again to see the very big trees and meet you again to celebrate a centenary of our diplomatic relations. Thank you very much for coming and joining us.
His Excellency the Polish Ambassador, the First Secretary, the Mayor of the Snowy Valley Council, esteemed members of the Kosciuszko Heritage Incorporated Group, our Kosciuszko National Park Aboriginal MOU Group representatives, our Polish friends and community, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to pay my respects to Auntie Iris White and Monaro Ngarigo people. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are conducting this ceremony today on Monaro Ngarigo land. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This is the first honour that I've had as the new director of the Southern Rangers branch to come and officially open something. So it is very much a monumentous occasion for me, and it's the gravity of why we're here is definitely not lost. This event that we're here today is in honour of the long-standing connection between Australia and the Polish community. This is best referenced by the events from 2019-20, from the fires. And as some of you may be aware, but some of you may not be aware, one of the first commitments for fire funding for national parks and wildlife actually came from Poland. There was a donation of $150,000. That donation has been used on some incredibly important conservation initiatives throughout the park, and particularly around erosion control work and also pygmy possum recovery. The 50 trees that will be planted here today at Geehi are suited to the local climate, and as you're all aware, they're representative of the 50 years of friendship, of diplomatic friendship between our two countries. And in fact, again, as humble as the ambassador is, the idea for this was actually from him, from a genesis of an idea back in April 2021. So, Ambassador, thank you very much for the inspiration for this very important event. Thank you. The two plaques that are here and for you detail what the trees signify, and they also provide an overview of the expedition for Strzelecki and the expedition team back in 1840. Today's events wouldn't be going ahead without a whole lot of work from some really important and passionate people. I'd like to recognise that work, particularly to the members of the National Park and Wildlife Service. I'd like to acknowledge the Riverina Highlands field staff, and particularly their area manager, Matt White, as well as the rehabilitation team led by Gabby Wilkes, with also some extra work from Michelle Watson. Your efforts in putting this together have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for your efforts. Of course, excellent events like these require lots of hands, so I'd also like to acknowledge the very much important work and sometimes behind the scene work of the Kosciuszko Heritage Incorporated Group. Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, of course, this couldn't have gone ahead today without the support and goodwill of the Polish Embassy and also our Polish community and friends. So thank you, each and every one of you. I'd like to leave you with this in terms of what this represents for me. These 50 trees that we're planting here today represent a living legacy that will support new growth in the park. It will drive conservation outcomes in the park. It honours the ongoing friendship and relationship between our two countries. And most importantly, it will preserve the cultural values through our shared connection to First Nation country and Australia's tallest mountain. I hope you all have a lovely day. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to invite Mayor of Snowy Valley Council, Mayor Ian Chaffee.
Good morning all. It's a great opportunity to be here today and acknowledge the contribution of the Polish community to this neck of the woods and to Australia generally. If you look at Mr. Strzelecki's association with Australia, he certainly knew how to pick the extremes. He climbed Mt Kosciuszko and obviously named it. He also named the Strzelecki track, which is out near Inaminka, and the Strzelecki Creek. So he certainly had a vast experience of what it was like to experience Australia's landscape. But I think it's very significant that we acknowledge the contribution of the Polish community here today by planting these trees. It's obviously that community has had a significant impact on the history of the Snowy Mountain scheme in particular, and I suppose be a little bit controversial here today, but I think it's only appropriate that we acknowledge the contribution that the Polish community are making to those in the Ukraine. I find it very interesting that a country that suffered the indignities of the Germans in the Second World War thinks it's appropriate that they should inflict those sort of indignities on the Ukrainian people. As I said, it might be a bit controversial, but that's the way I feel about it, and I think we need to acknowledge the fact that we as Australians need to offer whatever assistance we can to the Polish community in their endeavours to make the suffering that the Ukrainian people are experiencing at this point in time a little easier, if that's possible. But Mr. Ambassador, I would like to, on behalf of the Snowy Valleys Council and our community, express our appreciation for what's happening here today, and I'm not sure that I'll live long enough to see these trees to be substantial, but I imagine they'll go on and there'll be a significant recognition of that contribution that the Polish people have made to our country and this neck of the woods in particular. So thank you very much indeed. I appreciate the opportunity.
We now have a presentation from Mr. John Whitehead, the Vice President of the Upper Murray Historical Society.
Honourable Sir, to cement the friendship between Poland and the Upper Murray Historical Society and our local museum, with just a few words, I want to congratulate you on your talk this morning. And to further cement that friendship, I would ask you to accept this as a small token of our appreciation of your efforts and the efforts of our friends here. They know about the museum, and I hope and trust that one day you will be able to come and have a look at our museum.
I will, definitely.
And just to let you know, no one else knows about this. I made this up and I finished it this morning at 9 o'clock. Because I couldn't get stuff I wanted.